Welcome to the Strategy Mob Podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thanks for joining me in another episode of Strategy Mob. Today, I have two very special guests. I have Mr. Todd Phillips with me and James Crockett. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to come jam with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks, hey guys, for everyone out there who's watching and listening right now and kind of don't know who you gentlemen are and how you guys got started in the industry, if we can start off with a couple origin stories, I think that'd be pretty cool. All right, Todd, I'm actually going to let you go first. All right, what is the origin story that is Todd?
So this isn't bitten by a radioactive spider sort of thing? No, nothing like that?
I don't know. It could be. How'd you get into the business?
So I've been, I guess, in the journalism business for about 30 years. So I'm the editor of Canadian Auto Dealer. So that's a magazine, both print and digitally, that reaches every new car and truck dealer in Canada. So probably been doing that gig now, let's say, for 9 years. And so we're really in the thick of it now during this COVID. But my background is journalism. So I've been a news reporter. I was in the Arctic for 5 years covering from 92 to 97, way back in the day. Done some radio, television work, but pretty much just a news guy. And so now we're in the thick of kind of the biggest story of our generation, I think, and certainly for the auto industry, probably even beyond. And so for us, it's been a fascinating time. So look forward to sharing some of what we've heard along the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. I am looking forward to getting right into it. But before so, I want to hear the origin stories that is James Crockett.
Started out with myself. I started out just washing cars with a summer job and got into the industry. I think I was 16 years old. And washed cars, worked in detail, lot attendant, was a shuttle driver, was an internal service advisor, worked my way through sales, did internet sales. So everything, I've done every role in a dealership except for turning wrenches. And it's been a whirlwind. I've been privileged to be around a pretty good group of people throughout my career. And 29 now. I have two Chrysler stores that I oversee and I'm partner in one. And it's been a whirlwind, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think a whirlwind is probably the best way to kind of describe this, right? I mean, I think both from an industry's perspective and an operations perspective. I mean, from an industry perspective, we're getting hit with new information. It feels like almost hourly.
Yeah.
It's like 1 minute we have to do this, and then literally, the next day or the next hour, it's like, whoa, this has got to change, and it's literally just a whirlwind right now. And in fact, actually, that's probably a great way for us to kind of start off this conversation. Is just kind of what is that current norm, for you guys right now? And Todd, I'm going to start off with you. What is the current norm?
Well, I'd say it's really a hybrid picture across the country. So you've got dealers. Some are open, some are closed, some are partially open. I mean, it seems to be the government regulations come out that change regularly. Just a couple of days ago in Quebec, they opened it up again in service as an essential service. So Quebec dealers are ramping up to get things going again. Some dealerships are choosing to stay closed for health or business reasons, or others beyond the regulations. So I'd say it's about as blurry a picture as you can imagine across the country. The one thing I'll say is that those that are opening are still open in some level, are innovating at a crazy fast pace. And I'm sure we're going to cover some of that. But I think the picture is very mixed. If you were trying to say, how do I buy and sell and service a car across Canada right now? It really depends where you are.
That's very true. James, for yourself, being right there front line, day-to-day operations, how does the new or the current norm, looking for you?
The current norm for us is definitely a very limited amount of employees. We're running about 20 to 30% of our typical staff count, but we're actually still doing 70 to 80% of the amount of business. My service department's actually had a record month last month for our customer side. Internal has been down because we're selling a few less cars, and I'm trying to lower put myself in a good cash position, but I've noticed that we've got a lot of our key players obviously are the ones that have stayed, and those people are able to achieve a lot more. So there's still a lot of meat on the bone as far as business in their area, and we're handling a lot of that business with far less people and doing it in a far more efficient way. The teams are working very, very efficiently, and that has been a really, really cool thing to see. As far as our service drive, we do I've been tracking it daily. We do between 20 and 40% of our daily customer ROs that are written. The customers actually never came to the dealership. So we're doing a lot of shuttling. Anybody that's within 50 kilometers of our dealership will pick the vehicle up, drive it back in, and it's worked pretty effectively. We still have an average of 16, 18 people come through the door. And a typical day for us is 22 to 24. So we're still very, very, we haven't felt it, but we're going out to get the business as best we can. And then in our sales department as well, we've I think in the industry have really fallen off on following digital retailing. I just think it's been we've had so many people come through the door that, it's something you might watch and monitor a little bit, but it hasn't been the great part of attention put on it. Whereas now it's the biggest part of our business and it's the biggest area of focus. And in that shift in focus, we've delivered 33 to 34% of our inbound internet leads month to date this month. And, that's the best that we've ever seen. And, we're still learning every day. So, I think that's going to be something that we see. The focus is there. The business is still, there's still, yes, it's changing, but the core of it's still there. It's just how much are we adapting and how much are we utilizing? I think that's every lead has worked, that much harder. Every customer response has happened, not just with the salesperson. It's like instantly a manager's on it or a general sales manager's on it, or even the GMs, on it. What do we need to do? Sending videos, sending information. And the biggest thing that I've seen, and it's, I think, a big mistake that auto dealers really everywhere have done is it's, trying to withhold information. And I think that's when I'll always, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot because it's just, get them in, just get them in. Yeah. Whatever it is. But, we're going in a different approach where it's, hey, if somebody inquires on one car, we send them information on 3 cars. And we send them something higher trim, lower trim, and the vehicle they're interested in, and our best prices, and an offer on their trade. And we'll send it to them right away. So it's, not a guessing game. You're not hiding through information. You're just being the epicenter of information, and you're not losing those leads. So that's a strategy we're using that's working pretty well for us at this time. But like you said, it's hour by hour, right? We got a new strategy every day. So we're going to see what works today and see what works tomorrow, right? So.
You know what? It's funny that you talk about leads, and it's kind of like, it's like this is the primary source now, right? And, for years as an industry, I consulted with dealerships, all over the country. And I hate to say it, but internet leads have kind of been treated as like third-class citizens, for the longest time, right? It was like, no, the customer in front of me, that's the best customer I'm ever going to get. That's the kind of customer I want. And worst case scenario, the customer that makes a phone call to me, okay, now that's my second level. That's one. And then, oh shit, those internet leads. Yeah, you mean those ones. Not for every dealership, but I would say for a good chunk of dealerships out there, they just have never really focused much on that. And so, yeah, it's like right now we have to fast track all of our training efforts, all of our attention to like, how do we communicate with someone online? Because we have always so much focused all of our sales training and our staff to be able to focus with someone either face to face or over the phone, and it's like that's going to change. So that's actually kind of a good segue into kind of my next question for you guys is, how do you see this new norm, kind of evolve? Like, Todd, I'm going to start with you and kind of the industry side, and then James, I want to come back to you and more at the operations side. But, it's like, I don't know when this whole norm is going to kind of come into play. Like, I love how people out there like just throwing dates out, like, we're going to be back normal on Tuesday of this month. What? Where the hell do you come up with that? But I feel like it is going to happen at some point where we're going to get this notification from the government saying, okay, come out of your caves now. You guys can start to explore a little bit, right? But with that said, so when that does happen, I think as an industry, what are the conversations around that? And then, at the dealership operations, what is the training that's going to be required to kind of handle that? Todd, I'm going to start with you on this. All right. What are some of the conversations you've been hearing about out there, kind of preparing for what this new norm is going to look like?
Okay. I can answer that in a second. I just want to say one thing just to pick up on what James had said earlier. I think that's quite an atypical scenario you're in, and congratulations to you guys for still running full operations, almost even with reduced staff. I've interviewed a lot of dealers who are either alone in their dealerships, looking around, whistling in an empty dealership, or at their home and just trying to get by, in some cases with 3 people and their entire staff laid off. And when I have conversations with them, you can hear them choking up that they've laid off their entire families and they're struggling through it. So that's what I said at the outset, is quite a different scenario across the country. So it sounds like you guys have got a different scenario on the positive. So I might want to talk to you do a separate interview offline to get a message of hope out there. So how I think some of this is going to change. Certainly the digital retailing is a big focus. A lot of dealers we talk to, and even the supplier community, we've interviewed a number of vendors who provide the digital retailing tools, and their phones are ringing, their emails are inboxes are filling up because people are saying, okay, finally we have to actually take this a little more seriously. And it's not necessarily this whole full digital retailing all the way to e-commerce and wet signatures, but basically digitizing the experience. And I think the consumers have been advocating for that for a long time. How is this just a better experience? I want to look at stuff in the privacy of my home. I want to navigate your F&I menu on my own. I don't want to be locked in the box for that period of time and be forced on some sort of menu selling operation. So the dealerships I'm talking to are saying, yeah, we're already there. We're moving there in some ways. It's a very complex thing. It sounds like it's easy to do, but obviously if you're taking everything from the online top of the funnel all the way through to the final delivery, there's so many bits and pieces of information, to try to even price a vehicle, to get it down to that accurate price that's realistic is not easy science and integration in the background, but I think certainly a move to that. I think things like test drives will probably see new protocols in place where dealerships are going to recognize certain percentage of their customers are going to be cool walking back in the dealership interacting once this subsides. Others are going to be looking for more sanitation protocols. Even I had one conversation with an OEM leader yesterday, and they were talking about even, in the short term in the service bays, if physical distancing continues, the service bays are 4 feet apart. You can't even actually service a vehicle and not be in contact with someone else in your service bay. Even, in some cases, more than one person is working on a car at the same time. So do you go to every other bay, in terms of being able to open, but then still...
Isn't that what the airlines did? They don't sell the middle seat anymore, which I like.
So I'm sure that would have an implication for dealers on their capacity. So, to be able to get throughput if they have to do things like that. So those are just some of the things I see. But I think profoundly, I think they're also going to really look at their operations and look at their cash flow positions. And I think they're going to, no one would have expected this, but I think a lot of dealers are pretty highly leveraged and sort of, those that have had, money put aside for rainy day, probably able to weather the storm a little better. But I think some will look at their operations and start to tighten up. And look at where they can save money. So that's some of the stuff that I've seen from conversation with dealers, but I'm curious to hear from James.
Well, it's I'm actually just jotting down a note that two things that you're saying. So it is very similar actually. Like to BC, I know BC's actually had a pretty low effect as compared to Ontario and Quebec, but we still have had a pretty imminent impact from the social distancing and a lot of dealers closing. I actually closed my showroom for 14 days. And it's worked on an appointment only basis. Like currently I have 2 salespeople and 3 managers. Like we are down to a very, very limited staff. How we've operated, and it's really, it's kind of a funny thing. I read a book a few years ago and it was talking about, an 80-20 rule, and you should invest in 80% of your customers and fire 20% of them because you're, putting too many, you're utilizing too much of your resources to 20% of the people that are going to be unhappy anyway. And if you devoted that to the other 80%, you're reinvesting in your business. That is almost what we're doing right now. And it is, we don't let people don't just come into the car dealership. People aren't just showing up to wander around, and we're actually not even letting that happen. We're giving people information, asking them actually if they, aren't serious about purchasing a vehicle, that we would ask them maybe to leave, and we can send them information and give them the necessary amount of information to help them, make an informed decision. And then if it comes to test drive, they'll disinfect the vehicle and get it prepared for you. But it is, it's very, I think the big difference is I've always sold cars. It's been the circus of sales for me, the circus for selling cars. And it's, getting as many people as you can in the showroom. Like on Saturdays, we'll book 40, 50 appointments for a Saturday, try and get 30 people through the door and sell 10, 15 cars based on emotion and energy. And I think that's going to be the thing, that's the big shift. Out of people that are through my showroom right now, 90% of these customers are buying vehicles. People are coming in right now, approved, income done, before they're even looking at cars. Because I don't want to not only waste our time and resources, because I have so few people, I don't want to risk the health and safety of their customers and my own staff. So if we've got an opportunity that's coming through the door, we're going to have the vehicle ready, prepared out front. We're not looking at 10 different cars. We're going to look at one, maybe the second one, but that much resources is tied up to disinfect a car and make sure it's ready. And 2, a lot of people are laid off. But you can't finance a vehicle right now. Even if you have an 800 Beacon and you make $150,000 a year, you're getting an income call and a job call. And you're not going to get a snap approval out in BC. We are able to do spot deliveries. Somebody can come in and buy a car, deliver, and drive it off the lot that day. I know, and with OMVIC's regulations, a little bit different in Ontario and different places that the 24-hour cooling off period. That's really that's very similar to what we're doing here. right now, it isn't. You need a fundable contract essentially before a customer drives off the lot, because if you have a contract in transit for 3 to 5 days and a customer loses their job on the Monday when they go back to work, like all of a sudden, what are you going to do? You got to have a lot tighter paper. And the deals at the dealerships, it's every interaction with the customer is that much more stringent. Like the process has to be perfect. But in knowing that, we're doing a far better job with it. So we're still tracking to sell. My store sells about 90 to 100 cars a month, and we're tracking to do 75, 80. So depending on how it goes through the end of the month, that's probably what we'll do. But the difference is in any other given month, I'd have about 450 people through my showroom or in a live interaction with the salesperson. Right now, I'm more like 120 to 140 tracking, and we're closing 55, 60% of that.
That's actually, that brings up a really good point. I actually was on the phone with the dealer the other day, similar to you, James. They're down a bit more on the sales side considerably. On the service side, they're about 40% down in ROs. But what they've had to do, or what this has forced them to do, has actually been a really big eye opener to the dealer principal. They've had to do a lot with a little. And he was talking to me and there goes, Jason, I hate to admit it, because it might sound bad or not empathetic, but my profit margins right now are through the bloody roof. I mean, I have 3 guys in my dealership right now who are playing 4 roles. Each guy is a salesperson, an F&I manager, a sales manager, and a service manager, all into one singular role. And yes, we're doing less business, but the profit margins are considerably higher. And that's actually a good question. I mean, do you guys foresee, when we come back into this new norm, dealerships that have now gotten accustomed to being able to do more with less, like, is that going to fundamentally change our operations? Todd, I'm going to start with you to kind of get your thoughts on that, and then James, I'll bounce over to you.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think that's when we look at the operations as dealers come out of this, those have been really impacted in the short term for cash flow and whatever. They're obviously going to look to tighten up their operations, and I think some of them will be looking at, do we really need all these positions? I know it's a tough message for the industry if you're laid off right now, just hoping you're going to come back to full employment. But I think as you look at, some of these changed roles, some of the way that people are interacting, even as we are now through video and, so communication, so the sales teams, I think there'll be more remote work available for people in dealerships, whether for health or other reasons. And I think people will get used to interacting. I interviewed a GM out of a Chrysler dealership recently, and I visited the dealership before. The first thing that happens when you walk in, she greets you at the door, big smile, super friendly, really, really capable GM. Now she says, now I'm going to have to adapt to actually using tools like this for people, and I can complete deals and transact. So when you actually think about the available time to work and interact with people using a bunch of other tools, we can actually be hyper productive. And I know that's not necessarily a message people are waiting to come back to work, as I say, really want to hear, but I think dealers will have to kind of start to look at the risk to their business that they face during this, and how much risk tolerance they want to have to go back to really full employment levels. So, and I know there's a lot of legal and HR complexity around all of that, but I think I can see them definitely tightening up.
James, your thoughts on this?
I think would be speaking the same tune. I think there will be a limited. The industry is going to change in a lot of ways. For example, my dealership, I have usually between 13 to 16 salespeople, and I'm in a pretty small market. I live in I'm in a town of less than 100,000 people, so and it has 2 Dodge stores, so that is pretty heavy. I don't think we'll ever go down to that. I don't think we'll ever be back to that. We've had a lot of staff where it's they sell 5, 6 cars in a month, but they're not generating, they're not creating, they're not doing any business. They're simply doing transactions that come through the door, and I think those transactions are going to happen less and less. And also,
it's kind of that 80-20 thing you were talking about,
Exactly. And the difference is the guys that have been with me for 3 to 5 years and that sell 15, 18 cars a month, they're professionals. They're going to have a good service. They're not going to leave customers with unanswered questions. And if they do, they're not just going to make stuff up. Like I know there's going to be a, more of a linear process happen amongst my sales floor if I run lean, let's say 6, 7 guys. But if I have the new guys that are trying it out, and I know a lot of dealers do it, more tits, more milk, right? They're focusing on these young guys, and how detrimental are these, inexperienced staff members when you're almost overstaffing? How is the impact of that to your customer experience? And I think the biggest wake-up call for this is, I really do think in a lot of ways things are going to go to a more normalized position again, probably in the next year or so. It is going to go similar, customer interaction, human interaction. We need it. You need it as people. Like, what is everybody starving for right now? If you're stuck in your home, man, like, you just want to go to a pub and have a beer, or like just, go to a buddy's house or sit on a patio or do something, right? Well, the same kind of interactions, you might want to be interactive with somebody when you buy a car. Something goes wrong with the car, you want a point of contact at the store. You want a relationship, right? Relationships still really, really sell.
No, I totally agree with you, but I'm wondering though that if it's going to be slightly modified.
It will,
in the sense of, instead of a handshake, is it an elbow? But you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I still feel like I'm with you, James. I'm with you on this one.
Where I'm getting to with this though is that I feel that the opportunity that you have, I think before leading up, up until February, was not valued as much as what it will be moving forward. So I think more of the top tier level of your staffing, your senior level managers, I think will be more engaged on a customer level. And the old sales manager that puts a seatbelt on and sits at the desk and works in the desk and doesn't talk to customers, those guys are going to be extinct. It's going to be over for them, because the only thing is it's going to be the interaction. And I think from the top down, the highest level of experience is going to be engaged with more of the consumer side than ever before. I think that's going to be something that doesn't ever change, because we're we went from year over year record sales 2015, 16, 17, 18, all the way through, and we might not be as privileged to have those types of lush economies in the future here. So for every opportunity that you get, they're, I think, going to be treated with far more importance and a lot more attention put on them from pretty well everybody in the industry.
I'm with you on this, James. Like, I think as an industry, we're realizing that we can process the crap out of what we do, and we don't necessarily have to bring in so many bodies. I mean, how often have you guys heard this term where you're talking to an owner and they're like, man, you know what? I just need more bodies on my sales floor. Like,
yeah,
what the hell does that mean? Like,
well, you know what? One thing that I think that just is nuts is auto responses and templates. Like, what the fuck, right?
Exactly.
Like but that's been done. What template do I use? And auto responses, and we use Vin Solutions. I'm a pro Vin Solutions guy, but they're talking about auto responses, and it's the templates and firing tasks, and really really removing the relationship away from the sales. And it is just you can tell a template, right? You can tell when something's an auto response. You can tell when something's a bot when you're a consumer, and that's what people don't want. But the fact that for years we've relied on that, and we haven't even had an in-person interaction with somebody that's actually went online with interest that is inquiring to buy a car, and we fire them off a bot message from a template. Like, what the hell are we doing? So I think that's going to be a big thing. That's going to be a big change. I think the importance of every interaction is going to be, more emphasis put on them for sure.
I'm going to, in the interest of generating a good podcast, I'm going to mildly disagree with you guys a little bit on the longer term impact of this, just because I think it's an expression about technology. I'm probably going to screw it up, but we tend to over exaggerate the impact of a new technology in the short term and then sort of understate it in the long term. I think in this case, there's sort of a transformation that's going on society-wide that's so much bigger than the auto industry. Even Airbnb the other day, I got an email from them. They're pivoting their entire business model to Airbnb experiences. So rather than go book a place where I don't want to go actually book and stay in someone else's potentially coronavirus infected apartment, thank you very much, but I can book a time with an Olympic luger for a day, or a chef, or a violinist, or whatever it is. So they're pivoting their entire business model. And I think as people get more acquainted to just the world of this online e-commerce kind of digital experience, it's going to change a lot. And I think there's going to be a lot more demands in the industry for really a much better digital showroom experience at the OEM level, to be able to do virtual test drives, to be able to really navigate your way through a website that isn't such a lead-driven funnel, just driving them into that in-purchase experience. I think it's going to have to transform. I think the OEMs have been trying to push the dealers that way, but they don't have, obviously, control over all the websites, so they've been sort of trying to push digital retail. But I think overall, we're in such a bigger change that's going on right now that I think it's easy to get caught looking at our own industry. But if you kind of lift your head up a bit and look around, you're saying, the entire world is stuck indoors trying to figure this shit out, and I think that's going to be a longer term impact.
So Todd, do you see, I'm just going to get your thoughts on this, like, could we potentially see mixed McDonald's style digital kiosk in dealerships? I mean, where you still have a person there, so if you want to choose to actually engage with someone, you can walk right up to the counter and order your food like you have. But McDonald's put those kiosks in place. They lowered their staff, they lowered their labor. In fact, the reporting that comes out is that they've actually increased their revenue per transaction by almost 30%. By giving the customer that opportunity to build and develop their own transaction. What are your thoughts on that, Todd?
Yeah, the only other thing is people are going to be maybe hesitant to touch kiosks in general, but I agree with in principle that they're going to want to interact with things. I know there's already technology out there where you can drop off your car, drop off your keys for service. You can enter in the service experience you want. Automated systems that I saw at NADA this year where you drive your car in an alignment rack. It's already giving you a digital readout of the work that needs to get done. I think the one thing about it is I think there's a generational push here too. The younger people, and my experience, they're less hesitant to want to interact and talk with other people. They'll do all the shopping online, and this sounds kind of cliche, but avoid any kind of human contact if possible. So I think that drive is at odds with the card experience, where people are saying, look, if I get them in my environment and I get to interact with them, I've got charisma, I have charm, I'm going to be able to listen to them, do a needs analysis, do all sorts of stuff. And that is sort of the traditional experience, and people are really good at it, and it's going to work for a big chunk of the population. There's another chunk of the population that's going to look at cars as a commodity, and they're going to go, how do I navigate my way through and get the blue one delivered to my? And the reason sometimes people in the dealership world are uncomfortable with it is it seems like it's devaluing their value that they're bringing to it, but it really isn't. If you're more of a facilitative approach as opposed to the one that sort of sold them on the idea. And I think people want to sell themselves on stuff, and these digital tools will be available where they're going to quietly and privately sort of self-select and go through the funnel. And then, the magic still has to happen at the experience where you make sure they're in the right product. But I think that's just some of the things that I've seen that are broader than that. I'd be curious to hear James's perspective too.
Well, I have it is interesting you say that, but the one thing, I'm a pretty young guy. I am actually a millennial, but I've been in the industry for 13 years. It hasn't really changed. Like it is. I don't think we'll go to a kiosk. I think as much as people want information, it's how it's delivered to them. In a different side, I was a few summers ago. I was looking to buy a Sea-Doo, supercharged Sea-Doo, and went into a dealer, and the guy didn't really help me with anything. And I kind of just got information and left. But then I ended up buying a Sea-Doo from a friend of mine who was selling it. I bought it because I had a relationship with the guy. So I do think that is going to have a really big part to play. And I think the other thing is buying a vehicle is very expensive. There's a lot of moving parts to it. If you ask a customer that is got a lien on their car, a lot of people think that they can't trade it in, right? Because they have a lien on their car. They're still paying for it. A lot of people think their vehicle is worth far more than what it is. A lot of people don't really know what they can get into, and a lot of people don't understand their credit or what they could be approved for. And also there's a lot of moving parts with banks. It's not like getting pre-approved for a home. There's loan to value ratios. There's negative equity situations that, we're obviously that's another topic, but there's a lot of moving parts to it that I don't think it's going to happen online. I think maybe 10 to 15% of transactions could happen that way. And those are going to be, people that do have, are able to prime customers with no negative equity, or lease type vehicles, and maybe like a subscription type deal in the future. But there are a lot of people we do deal with. 40-50% of our customers are credit challenged, have negative equity. There's a lot of differences. So you can spend as much time as you want on a kiosk looking at what you want to see, but a lot of customers aren't coming in and driving away in what they wanted to drive away in, and it is just a bit of a reality. And if somebody was to explain to me, if in a person to person thing about, hey, you're sitting with a financial person at a dealership, and they're explaining to you your credit, and they're explaining to you as to why this might be in a stepping stone program like a lot of people are in, and explaining, hey, you know what, 2.9% is available, but this is the reason why you're paying 10.9%. And here's the facts of why you're driving this car. Hey, I understand you like that new Ram, but you owe $20,000 more on yours than what it's worth. And those are things that a kiosk is never going to be able to make sense of. And it's going to be, I think it would be a frustrating thing. Whereas, if you actually have an interaction person to person with a customer, you show, you can show, I guess the path to the customer, right? And
you get to connect human to human, right? And then I look, I think it's a valid point, but I think it can go both ways here. And I think for us as an industry is that, we have to develop out different alternatives, right? Like I honestly think that we need to give the customer more of the steering of the process so that they can kind of ultimately decide. And, look, I agree. I think there's going to be people that are going to want to come in. There's going to be people not going to want to come in. I agree with you, James, that I think people are still going to want to connect person to person. In fact, I was talking to an F&I manager the other day that is doing, of course, everything, via video, right? Explaining everything. And you know what he told me? He goes, honestly, Jason, my per copy right now is higher than it's ever been. And I said, well, okay, because he honestly didn't think that was going to happen. He thought that, being apart from each other and having to communicate, via video, that he was going to be able to make that connection. He goes, honestly, I'm actually making the connection faster than I've ever had before. And I said, well, tell me why you think that. And he goes, it's because of these things. Like, because we're having to use these things to video chat, I'm finding the customers to be very hyper, attentive. Like they're listening to every single word I'm saying. They're engaging and asking more questions than they ever did when I was in the dealership and in person, and maybe there was just a lot of stuff going on and things like that. So, I think that there is a place for us to continue to engage with customers from a remote basis, even as we get into the new norm. But I'd love to hear both your guys' thoughts on this. Todd, I'm going ahead and start with you.
Well, one of the things I think that is effective is it feels like it's your own time. I mean, in the dealership office, when you're in that F&I office, I mean, all the studies show like that is a painful experience. People want to get out of there as quickly as possible, but there's so much margin to be made in that experience that the dealers can't open it up to make it a good experience. It's one of the last bastions of profitability. So it's like, I can't let you out of here. I've got a lot. I need margin on the product. So you're on their terrain and you're in their environment. If you're having that conversation from home, I'm here, I got my coffee here, I'm relaxing, we're having a chat about something. It's all good. This is my time. I'm giving this time to you. I'm not trapped in your environment. I can leave, cut it short anytime. So I think when people get used to that, sort of, it is just communication, and the F&I products have great value. I think Gap insurance and job loss stuff, I think people are really going to want to hear about that stuff now. Like, where's my protection on that? So I think it's a sense of my time versus your time, right? And your terms versus my terms. I think if you surrender, I think you mentioned earlier, Jason, some of that control over to the customer, and you just have to let that go and put them in charge of it and sort of, work with them in that way. I think the consumers, especially the big generation of buyers, are going to like it a lot more. It'd be a more pleasant experience. So.
James, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to turn into a big service overselling, right? Everybody has been withholding, selling with withholding information and trying to control what the customer sees. For example, Facebook came out in 2007, right? That's quite recent. So we have, as much as we think the industry is going to change a lot today and moving forward, it's already, it has changed in a lot of ways. There used to be dealers that, in Alberta, and you wouldn't even put the prices on the cars on the lot, let alone on the website. And I remember being an internet manager in 2010, and I was like, hey, we should put the prices online, Like that might drive some more leads, because I keep getting leads of pissed off customers just simply asking what a vehicle's worth, and it's screwing up my ratios, and I'm not really getting engagement. And I was looked at like it was like, you stupid kid, you don't know what you're talking about. This dealer is now not even in the car business anymore, because obviously he didn't adapt, right? But it is. I think the message is, if you're going to have success in the industry, moving forward, and it isn't just car sales, it's any industry, but service overselling. You got to be able to be the epicenter of information and drive that information home. It's not about closing a car deal based on emotion anymore, because the emotion is going to be very, very difficult to create. And especially through, like you said, through an interaction where they're in control. If you don't like it, click, you're gone, right? Bye. And you can just ghost those people. And millennials, that is the thing. People in that demographic and age group, they've grown up with these phones since they were some of them 8 years old. So, a phone call comes in, they block the call, text you, hey, what's up? So if and I think a lot of it is, there's over the years, trying to make an appointment with a guy, or you got a lead and it's like, hey, I got this guy approved, let's just get him in because, we're going to try and switch him a vehicle or something like that. It used to be like, just get the guy in and treat him like a mushroom, right? Keep him in the dark and just get him here. Well, that's not working. That's not going to work. You got to give the information, and you've got to be able to confidently give the information. And I think the biggest thing is in the sales industry is a lot of people are pussies. They're scared of confrontation. They're scared to give bad information. I think that's where a lot of salespeople get a bad rap, is that they're, maybe making something up. And it is, I don't think, there are some different folks, but I think people are scared to deliver bad information because they're scared to lose a deal, The reality is you don't have a deal. Don't be scared to lose a deal that you don't already have. Give the information, feed the straight goods, and people are going to give an appreciation of that. But if you're the person that gives the information, and if you're the epicenter of information, whether it's good or bad information, if you deliver bad information, you're still the trustworthy source of information. And I think a lot of it is going to be, how big your reach can be, and a reputation is going to really, really play into that. Are you a straight shooter, and you somebody that's going to deliver straight goods? Because then from there, that's going to be, kind of your mantra. You're going to have a lot more trust with community. And I think community is going to be a big thing. We've seen a lot of, over the years, transiency in customers, right? Service departments are going down 10% year over year with CPRO counts. Independents are going up 10% per year, right? Your Mr. Lube and your Quick Lubes and that kind of stuff. But I think it is going to start really growing to the sense that, if there is going to be a dealership, the only way they're going to be successful is that they have a sense of community and long-standing tenured staff. I think the industry shifted away from that in the last 7 to 10 years. And I have an inclination that it is going to go back to that, kind of a community where it's like, hey, this guy's been here for 9 years. He sold me 4 cars. This is my guy. And I think those are going to be the salespeople that really survive. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in this industry that are going to be in other industries soon.
I think that's a great point. In fact, actually, it's a perfect segue kind of into my next question for you guys is, what do we do with our staff? I mean, I think there's a small percentage of them out there that are prepared, trained, developed, and coached on how to communicate the way the customer now expects to be communicated to. And, how do they sell from that perspective of kind of what you were saying, James, of the core of being a community? It's not this fast talk speed, fast talking, slick hair back, just get the deal done, get the deal done. It's like we, as consumers, we don't have to deal with that anymore. Like we have serious choices. We get to choose who we're going to do business with. And I think we're going to see a lot more customers are taking the time to do the research to find out who they ultimately want to do business with before they kind of take those next steps. So from a training perspective, Todd, I'm going to start off with you from the high level industry perspective. It's like, what do we do with this big body of people that have just never been trained and coached and developed that way?
It's a really good question. Actually, at NADA this year, for the first time, there was an awful lot of talk about human capital and investing in training, partly because the economy was so booming that there was really a very, very low unemployment. So they're really trying to figure out how do we train our human capital. But interesting, probably maybe 5 years ago now, I went over to England to study sort of, retailing over there and, the Audi City model and Hyundai Rocker, which was basically a little outlet in the largest shopping mall in all of England that sold and retailed cars, and you could take test drives from the parking lot there. And the interesting thing there is they hired people outside the automotive industry. They're just retailers. And it was kind of neat to see. They're right next to the Virgin Mobile retail shop and all the other, Nike stores. And they hired everyone who were attractive, smart, and they tested them for customer experience and delivering on that value, right? Providing a great customer experience. And I think the auto industry is going to evolve that way. So that model, you can actually purchase from kiosk in the store, buy your car online, have it delivered. Next time you go shopping, you drop off your keys, shop for a few hours, come back, they'll get it serviced. I mean, it was crazy. It was like seeing the future of where the industry could go. But the thing I took away really was their approach. They were all consultative salespeople who knew nothing about the car, but they could, and their contract was about a page and a half. It was about like a cell phone contract to buy a car. So they really simplified all the complexity of it and made it just a really good, fun customer experience. You walked in and there was video all over the place. They only had 3 cars in the showroom. So to get to your point about training, I talked to some dealers who are saying, I don't really want to hire people from inside the auto industry who have moved at this dealership and now they're coming here and I got to get rid of their bad habits. So if they go and have a really good experience at a restaurant or at a golf club or whatever it might be, and they're just really customer service focused, that's the person I want in my dealership because that's what my customers expect. That's the best of breed experience they're used to getting. So you can't it's hard to train out sort of, years of experience and habits out of people, especially because if you've been in the same sort of community, particularly if you've got, I think, James, you mentioned 13 sales guys, they're all going to be competitive every month. Who's going to win? They all have their approaches to make for success. But if you think about it, like, what's the experience I'm delivering inside my dealership that differentiates me? I think you'd have a different idea about what you need to train in terms of your people. So yeah, that's my.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, think about that for a second, right? Like, if we hired for experience, all right, how much that would change our industry. And look, I love it. There are dealerships out there like, no, I have sales consultants. They're not consultants. Like, let's call a spade, okay? They consult about as far as they need to close a deal. They're closers. We literally created a culture of what I call a superstar culture, right? We don't hire people based on how well they treat customers. We hire them on how well they can close a deal. But I think that's going to fundamentally change.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, James.
Well, I think, it is. That is exactly it. I think the experienced staff that I've had over the years, I've been in my current dealer for almost 4 years, and came from another store within our group. So I've had a lot of my key staff, my general sales managers, both my sales managers in this location. They've been with me since they were babies in the car business. Like, I've raised them to, teach them to walk. Right? They didn't know how to do anything on their own, but now they do it. It's funny. Like, I even walk by and I don't get involved with customer interactions as much as maybe I should or used to, but I hear these guys talking with staff, and they're using verbatim word tracks that I've used for 10 years with them. Like, it is exactly what I've interacted with them, and even the way that they deal with heat scores or kind of thing, like unhappy customers or if there's faulted vehicles. I pride myself on my moral compass, and I back my customers, and I know that my staff does it as well, because they've been trained with me from the get-go. But in the last few years, I have brought a lot of people from Edmonton. Edmonton had a very, very hot car market, and I brought a lot of old school car guys that used to be 30 car guys or whatever. They came out, they sucked. Everybody's got the biggest expectations. Their income expectations are out of this world. They want to be paid the moon. They want special contracts. They want special hours, and they're just simply not getting the results that some of these new guys are doing just because they're good people. So to put in line with what Todd said is, if you find somebody and you had a good experience at the golf club or at a ski hill or something like that, where you've had this interaction that stands out, those are the people that you need to find. You can teach anybody to sell a car, and really even not even having them have to sell a car. I've got managers that are great at selling cars. I just need people that are knowledgeable enough how to set up somebody's Bluetooth and show them how to use the nav system, and are friendly enough to talk about. If they can make a friend, and they're just truly just good people with good moral compasses that are interesting enough people, then the rest is very, very easy. So I think, yes, that point is very, very true. And I think a lot of the people that are trying to be the fast talking people that are jamming people into cars, not only are our governing bodies going to help to eliminate that, I think the industry itself is going to eliminate that, because the experience is huge, and the training and the delivery of the information is the biggest thing. Like, a lot of
we can't just hire bodies anymore.
No.
I think that's kind of what we're all saying, right? And it's cool. Actually, we all agree on this one. So this is perfect.
Yeah, but we're just getting a little. I'm at another meeting here in about 5 minutes.
That's cool. Hey guys, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our time, so I want to thank you guys for jamming with me. But before you guys go, we get to have my favorite part of the entire podcast, where I get to both ask you guys what is pissing you off. And Todd, I'm going ahead and start with you. Todd, what is pissing you off?
I had the whole podcast to think about that, and I really struggled to come up with something. I would say, with respect to our industry, there's a lot of people who cling to kind of sort of a fairly myopic view of what it needs to do, and they repeat that. And some people have sort of made a living out of having a set processes. And I think the world's changed pretty quickly. And I think I talked to a lot of dealer principals who are really looking at, should I even be in this business? Where am I with my succession planning? What's the impact of this on my thinking a really, really big picture? And they're very interesting conversations. So sometimes the people who, I guess, in our industry who, have to make a living, I guess, it's sort of presenting, information sometimes can be a bit out of step and maybe not advising the industry. So it's not that it pisses me off. I'm raging about it. Everyone's got to make a living, but it's such a dynamic picture that I appreciate podcasts like this, where you've got to share, bounce ideas around. It's not a very clear picture, but I'm always kind of suspicious of people who have that absolute clear vision of how it's all unfolding and want to wrap it up in a seminar or whatever it is. Because I'm like, dealers are super smart, super resilient, and they see through that stuff. And just as a maybe slightly cynical journalist guy, that kind of gets under my skin at times.
That's awesome. You're so composed about it too. Like most of the other people, we get a lot of people on the show, and there's a lot more 4-letter words and use and stuff like that. Not saying you have to, but very well composed. Well said. Okay. James, all right, man, you're up to finish this off here. What is pissing you off, James?
I wouldn't say it's pissing me off, but I find it very, very interesting, and I'm interested to see the change in, kind of just to elaborate what we were just talking about is how many salespeople that are just relying on trying to, I guess, jam a sale. It isn't, people got to create value. You got to create a relationship now more than ever. It's pretty sad to say, and it's going to be sad to see that a lot of people are going to lose a lot of their, success that they found in the industry. They won't be able to find success without adapting to it. Those that had, created value and shown value before and kind of put their customer experience first, I think that they're actually going to really take off from this. And I think a lot of the dealers and salespeople that, focused on the right now and right now only, I think they're going to really, really see it slip. If they haven't been taking care of their customers, haven't built a culture, and don't have a long-standing staff, I think they're going to find a lot of failure. So I wouldn't say that it's pissing me off. I'm very, very interested to see how this follows, though, because those that make it through this, I think are going to make it through with shining stars. It's going to be, almost a compounding effect of something that they've already chased. And I think in the other way, if it's, a month-by-month thing, it's going to compound even further, right? So it's going to be interesting to watch. We're doing everything we can. We're going to work our hardest and do our best and doubling down on our relationships, not just with our staff, but our relationships with our staff and our customers. That's going to be a big area of focus for us. And wishing everybody the best of luck.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Hey, guys, real quick before you go, for everyone out there that's listening and watching right now and love to connect with you guys and just kind of follow along with you, what is the best way to do so? Todd, I'll start with you.
Sure. Anyone can visit CanadianAutoDealer.ca. That's a website. My contact information is there. There's tons of content, video content. We're doing everything we can during the midst of this to help dealers stay informed. We have e-newsletters, video content, all that stuff. So certainly reach out to me through there, and I'd be happy to connect and certainly hear any dealer stories or anything out there. So
awesome. Thank you. James, yourself, best way to connect with you?
Best way to connect, I'm pretty active with LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I spend a bunch of time on there trying to create positive content and keeping people laughing, keeping people engaged. And Instagram. I fired up Instagram in October, so I'm trying to get that going. That's a plug. Give me some followers.
It's a good plug. Hey, guys, thanks again for your time. You guys have yourself a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, Chase.